What's up, LEGO builders? My LEGO city of Moenia Prime has been invaded by aliens. This invasion happened right under humanity's nose and almost no one saw it coming, infiltrating and establishing themselves in secret using humanity's own weapons against them. And today, you get to see how it all went down. If you're glad it's not more Gungan content, make sure to open fire on that like button and let's get building. Our story picks up where it left off in the last update. The HADF had launched a daring offensive right up to the steps of Lantern Industries and the lair of the Protectorate Army. This was all a distraction though, allowing a squad of commandos to infiltrate the building and rescue a captured scientist who worked there. Now back in the safety of the main base, he haltingly reveals the fall of Lantern Industries and the rise of the Protectorate state. He worked high up in product development and was part of the team building the robotic police force that went rogue. Several years ago, just before work on that project began, members of the board came down to the labs and introduced the scientists to some strange entities. At first, they all panicked thinking these were remnants of the bio nightmares, but the board assured them that these were actually beings from another planet. An explosion of knowledge followed. Not only were humans suddenly not alone in the galaxy, but this race had brought incredible technology with them that could reshape humanity's existence. The scientist wasn't sure when exactly the board of Moenia Prime first came into contact with this race, or how they even came to work together, but he explained these beings, nicknamed the Quadrinids, had a strange effect on people. It wasn't mind control, but as they communicated with someone, that person would be easily convinced to believe what the Quadrinid was saying and would fall into somewhat of a stupor. The person would leave the situation still in control of themselves and their thoughts, but whatever the Quadrinid had said would remain inside, now feeling like it was their own idea. This allowed the Quadrinids to infiltrate and reside at Lantern Industries in secret, convincing those around them to keep their existence unknown until the right time. This also explained why less and less people were allowed into Lantern Industries as time went on. Then came the fateful day when the Quadrinids ordered a lockdown and suddenly the halls were filled with sentinels shepherding everyone into containment. To the scientist, the months following the lockdown, which he later learned was the beginning of the war, were mostly a blur. But he did remember how fixated the Quadrinids were on building an army and securing the city. Now that they had full control of Lantern Industries, they dropped the pretense of benevolence and teamwork, repeatedly telling the scientists and others that humanity's last hope for survival was under the rule of the Quadrinids, and they all had to prepare for what was coming. This is where the sudden upgrades in technology came from in the Protectorate Force, though the scientists and others trapped there wondered why the Quadrinids seemed to have so little from their own world. They came in ships, but didn't arrive like a typical invading force would, armed with weapons and supplies. It almost felt like they were a remnant of something larger, but never gave any hints that more of their kind were coming. HADF Command pressed the scientists with more questions, like the location of the Quadrinids' homeworld, or where their ships were and how they even got here, but the scientists only knew that a couple ships were inside Lantern Industries in the underground factory. He also revealed that Lantern Industries had been working on a secret military contract with the HADF for a new expeditionary force of mechs and other vehicles, specializing in dense jungle environments, which the Quadrinids had taken and added to their army. This is why we saw mechs like the Bombardier and Heavy Class Kraken, which had no place in a peacekeeping force. Those present looked at the commanders at this revelation, but they refused to elaborate or acknowledge why a secret army was being built. At this point, the weakened scientist was shuttled away for further medical attention and left a very quiet group of soldiers behind. No one in their wildest dreams had envisioned they were up against an extraterrestrial threat like this, and now everything seemed uncertain. One thing was for sure though, they needed to communicate with HQ and try to make sense of this mess. That might have been the biggest lore dump I've dropped since starting Moenia Prime, and I'm so excited to finally reveal who's behind the Protectorate state. Now I want to dive deeper into who the Quadrinids are, what their ships look like, and what their plans are. But first, a LEGO haul. I needed a lot of new pieces to build stuff for this new faction, and most importantly, needed some more alien heads which come from one of the CMF minifigs. I really liked how they looked, not being a generic green alien design, and I felt like I could expand a little bit to create something more unique. I decided orange would pair nicely with the trans purple of the Quadrinids, and was a color I haven't used before. I'm trying to use a more vibrant color palette in my mocks after so many years of dark and light bluish gray, but the orange will be mostly a highlight color since I don't want things to be overly saturated and goofy. This is still a dangerous alien race, not a band of Oompa Loompas. I also stocked up on lime green for something secret I teased in a recent video. It's the end of the year, so I'm gearing up for 2026 and what's going to be introduced to the storyline next, and I'm really excited for what's coming. Plus, I get to return to an old staple of the channel, dark tan.
It's been 84 years.
I also found this strange green head with 2 eyes and nothing else printed on it. It was too weird to pass up, and if anyone knows what set it came from, let me know in the comments. I've been both surprised and really pleased with how many people have been asking me to build the Bio Nightmares and explore the events of the Bio Wars. So I've started collecting organic looking pieces to build an army of angry cybernetic machines. These are a race of intelligent octopus-like beings with their own language and name for themselves, but for convenience sake, the humans refer to them as Quadrinids. Small in stature, most have adapted to use metal four-legged bodies to get around better or be able to operate machines and tools more efficiently. They're not a mighty race of giants and warriors. Instead, their weapon lies in their brain. Able to influence the actions and thoughts of others through strange mental abilities, they act like a parasite, latching on to a bigger, more powerful host for survival, tricking it into accepting them instead of fighting. The effects weaken and disappear over time, so the Quadrinids need to keep consistent contact with their host to remain in control. They're capable of developing impressive technology and are highly sought after because of this. They were recently driven from their planet, and a small group has sought refuge on this one, where they found the perfect host in Lantern Industries. They arrived in this ship, which, by human measurements, isn't overly impressive, but it's able to carry a large number of their kind. It was escorted by a group of smaller fighter craft, which were hidden or destroyed after the Quadrinids infiltrated Lantern Industries, hoping this would help their presence on the planet go unnoticed. They have a unique way of traveling through space, which we'll get to in a later video, but that machine was also abandoned on the planet. The desolated and overall uninhabited nature of this world allowed for this tiny fleet to land and move about mostly unseen to any humans, which was another reason they picked this planet. Speaking of that, I need a good name for this world. I want to stop referring it to as a planet or the world of Moenia Prime, since there's so much more than that. So if you have any suggestions for a good planet name, drop them in the comments. I'm using a lot of large and smaller quarter round bricks to build a ship that looks strange and otherworldly, because no one expects aliens to roll up in an Airbus A380. Plus, I used these pieces on the larger Protectorate mechs, like the Kraken and Titan class mech, which represents the Quadrinids' influence on the mech designs as they started changing things to their own specifications. The reason the ship is already in such big chunks is because it took me a little while to come up with the right shape using mostly quarter cylinder bricks, and once I finally got something I was happy with and somewhat stable, I didn't want to completely disassemble it just to rebuild on camera, so this approach was the next best thing. I'm very happy with how the ship's looking so far though. I wanted that extraterrestrial vibe, but something that was still large and wide, like a ferry or some sort of transport vessel, since this build is far more akin to a cruiser or a frigate as opposed to a corvette or fighter. For whatever reason, I've always loved landing gear, and Lego landing gear is not something I'm super skilled at, but I really want to build some cool looking ones for this ship. I started with a droid body acting as the feet with some droid arms for support that raise and lower when landing. I built 3 with 2 at the back underneath each of the engines and 1 in the front. Overall, I think these turned out great and match the futuristic vibe. There are 2 known forms of Quadrinid so far. The first is the larger, more general purpose being, with an enlarged head holding its intelligence and mind-altering abilities, being supported on a spider-like body that can scuttle around on the ground or is even able to climb walls. The second is smaller and more specialized. These are often used as pilots, being the ones flying around in the small pods we see on the mechs. They don't have the same mental confusion-inducing capabilities, but have been shown to still be very capable in battle, quickly adapting to tactics and enemy units. This is everything I've built for the Quadrinid race thus far. I can't tell you how relieved I am to finally have all this figured out. I've known it was an alien race pulling the strings behind everything for months now, but up until very recently I had no idea what the specifics were. I kept things vague about much of their origins and reason for being on this planet on purpose for a couple reasons. First, I like to slowly reveal more of the story as time goes on, so it feels like we're part of the world, learning about things as humanity does, and if I were to give you a more complete history on why they came here and where they came from and what they're doing, it would involve spoilers for future projects. It's also fun leaving things unknown to a certain extent so you can speculate and imagine what could have possibly happened. This was no easy task, creating an entire race from scratch. With the humans and Protectorate forces, I at least had the classic minifig base to start with, unlike these guys. So hopefully I was able to create something compelling with the Quadrinids and do the Lantern Industries mystery proper justice. I also hope I didn't leave too much unanswered for now, but if you have any burning questions about the Quadrinids, drop them in the comments and maybe I'll answer. Also, shout out to the person who guessed it was aliens like 5 months ago. You were right. That's a wrap for this video, and until next time, happy building.